when you build a program, I think the way that I look at it right now and we're looking at it is you build a program through the foundation of building teams.
This is the Sean Miller Podcast, presented by Deer Park Roofing. Now, here's your hosts, Paul Fritschner and Adam Baum, with the head coach of the Xavier Musketeers, Sean Miller.
Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Sean Miller Podcast, presented by our title sponsor, Deer Park Roofing, and the official payroll sponsor of the Sean Miller Podcast, Payroll Partners, and our good friends, TGE Solar. My name's Adam Baum, joined as always by the head coach of the Xavier Musketeers, Sean Miller. Some of you may be wondering who's this guy opening the show when Paul always does it, but our good friend Paul Fritschner, he's up to his ears in wedding season right now.
No, I mean, a guy gets invited to more weddings than maybe anyone I've ever met. I mean, it's like every weekend, and then he has his own coming up.
Yeah, he does. So Paul will be back. We got some cool stuff in the works, but I figured a good topic today would be you survived the transfer portal season. It's good to see you look healthy. I know it was hectic, but today we're going to kind of talk about that, kind of talk about rebuilding your roster, a lot of these new guys that are joining you for next year. The season ends, and it's like you just went through all this, coaching, however many games it was this year. And then it's like a new season begins, and that season is the transfer portal season, which the transfer portal just closed a few days ago. But how do you approach it when it starts? Like, what's your mindset going into it? What's the plan?
Well, I think every year is going to be different. I think that's the first thing, Adam. There are some times when you're going to return a lot of your players, right? So you retain a lot of them. You have a lot of guys returning. Therefore, the spring isn't, I don't want to say not as important, but maybe you're not looking to add as many players to your roster. Same thing with, it all depends on how many players in the fall you have committed from high school, right? So if we have a recruiting class of 4 or 5 in the fall, and you have 4 or 5 guys returning or maybe even more, there are times when you move into the transfer portal and you're not as active, you don't need as many, and you move on accordingly. Transfer portal works 2 ways. You're always looking to add, but sometimes you're going to lose a player, and that's the way it is in 2024. That doesn't mean that you don't like the player, and at times that particular player didn't enjoy his experience at Xavier or wherever he's leaving. Guys are now made to feel, and sometimes they're correct, sometimes they aren't, that the next place can give them something that they didn't have or that they needed more of at their former place. But again, I think it's important to know, right? So when you think about the transfer portal, there are guys that are going to be leaving your program. There's going to be guys that are coming in. And I think that looking at it any other way other than what I just described, I don't know if you're on point there.
Yeah.
So this year in particular, we anticipated that we were going to have some turnover, that we were going to have some younger players maybe leaving our program. We knew that it was also going to be incredibly important that we get 3 things: older and more experienced. I'll count that as 1, right? I think that in the Big East Conference and in today's world of college basketball, experienced, seasoned players, older players have a big advantage. So that's one thing. I think number 2, we needed to replace Quincy Oliveri for sure. Quincy had arguably one of the great seasons ever in the history of our program. So we had a real need there, and we knew coming in that was going to be a key element. And I think the third part is just looking at our last season, we wanted to get older. We needed to make sure that we replaced our guard play with Quincy. And I think the third part is we needed to be deeper and just overall more talented, deeper and more talented, which is going to mean that when I say those 3 things, we were going to be heavy in the transfer portal, and we were. And I really like where we've ended up. We're not done yet. I think we have 1 or 2 more that we will add to our program and team. But to this point, I'm allowed to talk about all of our guys because they've all signed with us, and I'm excited to do so.
Yeah, and I think, you mentioned you're not done yet. At this moment that we're recording this, you have 10 scholarship players for next year, and at some point we'll run through them. But it seems so crazy to me where you even start, because I forget the final tally, but it was something more than 1,500 guys.
2,000.
2,000 guys.
Yeah. What's interesting too is, Adam, and I think I'm anxious to really talk about this, excited to talk about this on the podcast, because I don't know if this number's been shared enough, that of the around 2,000 people that are in the transfer portal this year, almost 25% of those are exercising their 5th year, their COVID year. I bring that up because when we get through next transfer portal season, which would be, spring of 25, that means that 25% of the players that are in this year's portal won't exist because there is no more COVID year.
Yeah, this is
I think the other part with the COVID year, and I really felt it last year, watching true freshmen, regardless of how talented they are, go against 50-year players who have worked hard, that are intelligent players, that have been well coached, that are talented in their own right. It's amazing how an incoming freshman's talent can be negated, or the advantage that is created just through the 5-year gap. And that's a big gap, especially when you look at life, like mentally, physically, the development. Dalen Swain, he played this past year for us as a true 18-year-old freshman. There are many times when Dalen was matching up with a 23-year-old 5th-year senior. And Dalen did a great job as a freshman for us, but I have no doubt that gap shortening for him is going to be a big advantage. And so when you look towards the future, I think that kind of skews your mindset a little bit with how you approach next year's transfer portal versus recruiting incoming freshmen. Know this, we want to recruit incoming freshmen. They just have to be able to, in our minds, be a part of our rotation as a freshman, or be willing to sit out and take a year of development. I have no doubt that when we are truly got both feet on the ground, and in terms of the continuation of building our program, there'll be a great blend of incoming freshmen that are growing older within your program, going from your freshman to their sophomore year, like Trey Green and Dalen Swain are this year, with the right incoming players from other schools through the transfer portal, some which have a year, but some which have multiple years. And I think it's going to be that blend that will bring out the most talented roster that we can put on the basketball court. And when you build a program, I think the way that I look at it right now, and we're looking at it, is you build a program through the foundation of building teams. And each year is going to represent a new set of challenges. Like I said at the opening, there'll be times when you get more players in the spring. There'll be times when you'll get very few players in the spring. There'll be times when you get more high school players, incoming freshmen, and I think there'll also be times when you have less. There's certainly going to be times when less players in your own program leave to transfer out than other times, and then there's once in a while you're going to have a heavier turnover. So that's the way of college sports. That's the model. That's what it encourages, and I think it's up to us as head coaches and coaching staffs to build a program in this evolving, ever-changing landscape. You can hate it, not like it, love it, whatever, but you have to adapt and change and evolve and grow. No different than in any other industry. When the iPhone came out, it made things feel funny. But to think about the world today without an iPhone, and you almost can't even fathom it, right? Well, we all had to adapt and change and evolve and grow and do things differently. Zoom calls. On the first Zoom call, I remember thinking like, is this going to be a thing? This feels funny, weird. It doesn't feel the same as being in person. Well, Zoom's now a real part of the puzzle. Maybe not the entire puzzle, but we've evolved, we've grown, we've adapted. And like even in recruiting, a presentation on a Zoom call is a powerful tool that we have to be good at and we have to be ready for, each and every year. A couple years ago, there was no presentation on anything called Zoom. So I think that's the way the college landscape has changed. And I think when you look at the transfer portal, it's a part of what we do. And I think we're embracing it, accepting it, and really trying to do the best that we can.
Well, I'm fascinated by the strategy behind how you attack it, because in my mind, it seems like this thing where on this day, the portal opens and it's like the floodgates open, right? All these dudes come in, you got guys leaving your team, and now you have to set on this journey of trying to find the guys to replace and fill your roster. And I know you have a dedicated coaching staff to help you do that, but you have to be very strategic, it seems, in understanding this is what we need, and we're going to spend our time going after the guys that we think we can get, because you don't want to spend a bunch of time going after guys that ultimately you don't believe you have a chance to get. So you have to be really strategic in how you approach this. So what was the process like for trying to track, okay, these are the guys we're going after, and, you know, sort of pinpointing them, and then being really strategic in how you go about getting them here on campus and committing?
Well, you know, the first thing is, you know, I think it's incredibly important that whether we bring in somebody from another college program in the spring, or whether we've recruited somebody out of high school and they're coming in as freshmen, that they fit who we are. They fit Xavier as a university, right? Both on and off the court. And they're able to be a winning player inside the Big East Conference. I believe it's America's best conference. So that's a high bar. How you go about determining those things, Adam, is no different than it's always been in recruiting. You have to do your research. I would just say the speed of it is different, because sometimes that research can be done over 6 months, 9 months, a year, even multiple years. You know, in this case, a lot of times you do have some familiarity. Sometimes maybe you've recruited this player at one point when he was coming out of high school or a year earlier. But you have to do the same thing. I think you have to really do a great job of, you know, checking on who they are, where they come from, what they're about, as far back as their high school career and setting, their travel team, you know, how they've done at their previous school. And what I have found is when one of the players that we've taken in the past has really worked out for us. And I'll use Sule Boom and Quincy Oliveri as two great examples. The previous school and basketball program that they left spoke glowingly about them. And it was very honest, it was candid. There were examples. You could tell it was genuine from multiple people inside that program that really loved who they were as teammates, as people, as players, et cetera. And I think that says a lot about the character of the player and their ability level when they leave a previous school, that those types of coaches still have such good feelings towards them. Life as a student here at Xavier, you have the best of both worlds. You have this small Jesuit private school with a really intimate campus where I think everybody seems to know each other. You walk into a classroom, the professor knows your name. You obviously know the professor, and you know your classmates. However, you're not in a small college town where that's all we have. It's just the opposite. You can access the city in quick 5 minutes. You have the professional sports scene, the diversity of a huge city over the Rhine. What it's become is just incredible. It really is. Some of the places that we all can go. And for a student at Xavier too, it just continues to offer the best of both worlds. I really believe that's one of our strengths at Xavier. It's an amazing way of getting a great education.
The Sean Miller Podcast is proud to partner with Deer Park Roofing, a company that's provided elite service for homes and businesses since 1996 and leads the industry in professionalism, quality, and responsiveness. Whether your needs are residential or commercial, like the outstanding work on the Cintas Center, the home of Xavier basketball, Deer Park can handle any job and ensure it's done right. Deer Park's motto is protect what's important, and what's important to you is important to Deer Park Roofing. Visit deerparkroofing.com.
Welcome back here to the Sean Miller Podcast. I think now is the time. You got 5 new guys. We just talked about the transfer portal, and the product of that work that you guys put in is 5 transfers. So I figure we'll go through one by one. We'll start with the first guy to commit, and that's Marcus Foster from Furman.
So I'm really excited about Marcus. We all are. One of the things that jumps off the page about Marcus is just his incredible experience. You know, he's been at Furman from start to finish. Those of you who follow college basketball know that Furman has one of the great young coaches in our game. And they're a very strong program. They're a winning program. 2 years ago, they were in the NCAA tournament and they beat Virginia in the first round. You know, Marcus has really developed and grown within the framework of Furman's coaching staff, offense, program, et cetera, and became an all-conference player. This past year, he didn't have as great of a season as I think he was set out to have because he ended up missing with some time with a knee injury that has since been fixed. He overcame that injury and ended up finishing the rest of the season. But his season this year was interrupted for several weeks to get surgery, to go through the rehab of the surgery, and then make a comeback. But what I love about him as a player is he does a lot of things well, not just one thing. He's a very capable three-point shooter. As a matter of fact, I believe he can shoot an even higher percentage moving forward. And talking with his coaching staff, again, back to the injury, I think he was set out to really have a breakout year scoring and shooting. And a lot of what he did this past year was interrupted. He's an excellent rebounder. When you look at the players that we really researched and you look at our team last year, one of the missing ingredients is being an overall better rebounding team. And when you say rebounding, Adam, as you know, everyone thinks big guys, right? Sometimes teams who rebound really well, they're led by their wings and guards and bigs. We need everybody to rebound. Marcus is an excellent rebounder. I love his ability to move without the ball and play the team game. He's played in a great offensive system for 4 years. He's an excellent passer. Like I said, I think he has a chance to be an excellent shooter. And when you look at him physically, he's right around 6'5", has very long arms, and he actually scores in and around the basket some as well. So he can play a different style. You could play Marcus with 3 other perimeter players and 1 big. You could certainly be out there with 2 other guards and 2 bigs. I think he's versatile. He gives our team depth and flexibility. He makes us older and experienced, and I love his rebounding. I also think from a defensive perspective, he's very smart. You know, I coached Colby, who'd been well coached for several years and was in a framework of a system, not only in college, but in high school. One of Colby's gifts is he just knew where to be on the court. Yeah. When I watch Marcus play, he knows what to do and where to do it at on the court. And I credit Furman, I credit Marcus. He's an intelligent player, has his degree. And again, coming from a winning program, coming from a program that prides themselves in execution, being in that program for 4 years, having his degree and doing the things consistently he's done from early in his career to the end, playing through his injury this year, we feel like we have somebody on our team this next coming year that maybe we didn't have enough of in the last 2 years, you know, where you have the versatility of a guard and a wing who can play alongside so many different people.
And like Quincy and like Sule, Marcus will be here for 1 year. 1 year.
And again, Marcus, let's put him in and around 15 points per game, you know, rebounding the ball at about 7 rebounds a game, if I'm really accurate on that. Those are the types of things that translate. And I think we've done our research enough to know that we've got ourselves a very good Big East player, and I'm super excited to coach him.
I know who else is excited. Andy Kettler, because Marcus Foster looks like he likes the weight room.
Again, he has a physically strong body. You know, when you look about adding players into your program, the Big East is a physical league. It was in 1987 when I showed up as an incoming freshman, and it's never changed. It is tough-minded, physical. Rebounding is important. Coaches and teams and programs are built on toughness. You got to be a two-way player to be successful in our league, and I think Marcus Foster is.
Yeah, no, we'll just go in order. The next guy that committed to Xavier was a guy who started his college career at the same place you played your college ball at Pitt. John Hugley joined Xavier coming from Oklahoma. So he started at Pitt, went to Oklahoma. Now he's coming to Xavier, and he's a big body. What can you tell us about him? What do you like about him?
Well, John's going to graduate from Oklahoma this summer, and you're right. He started off at Pitt in the ACC, where he had arguably his single best year there. He actually got hurt really when I think if you look at his career path, he was ready to explode on the scene. He was an all-ACC performer, and he was looking to back that up and add on to that. And he went down with a meniscus injury that sidelined him. He's healthy now, but once that happened, things didn't finish as well at Pitt as they had started. Went to Oklahoma, played 18 minutes a game in the Big 12 this year, was an important part of a team that was trending towards the NCAA tournament for a lot of the year. And I think to get John to come back here to the state of Ohio, he's from Cleveland, in his final season. He actually has 2 years of eligibility. But to have him at the ending of his career with all the things that he's gone through, not just the good, when he was an all-ACC player at Pitt, where I think he averaged during that season about 14 points and 7 rebounds a game, to leaving that program, going to Oklahoma, where at times he's been up and down, to getting him back here now. I think we have him at a point in his career and a time of his career where, number one, we're going to work together to get him in the best shape of his life. If you know John, he has amazing hands and a great touch and a feel for the game. He's got a big body in a good way. I think with Andy Kettler and our strength and conditioning program, where John is in his career path in life, I think we're getting a good collision of forces to allow him to be, again, in the best shape of his life. And when John Hugley is in the best shape of his life and healthy, I think he's proven in multiple games and seasons that he's as productive of an offensive front court player as there is in college basketball. Being able to score, pass, face up the basket, get fouled, make free throws, all the things that go with being a good offensive player, getting fouled. He checks the box in so many of those areas. I'm really excited about his ability to pass. You know, when you have big guys that can see the court and make good decisions passing the ball, I think when you surround him with good players, the better the competition, the more that skill set stands out. So we loved his passing. We love his hands and his ability to play offense. And I think defensively where he's at, especially at this point, is he can defensive rebound, and he's a smart player because he's played for 2 excellent coaches. He's towards the end of his career. When you think about experience, he knows what to do and how to do it. When you've played in both the Big 12 and the ACC, those are the only 2 conferences that he's participated in. You've played against the best and with the best. So I think moving him here into the Big East Conference, you know, he's not going to walk out there and be in awe of the other team. He's been there and done that. I also think John possesses a great sense of toughness and belief in himself that you want in a big guy.
For sure. Yeah, so you get Marcus Foster, you get John Hugley, you're probably feeling pretty good. And then, in my mind, the next 2 dominoes that fall have to make you feel ecstatic. The first one was Dante Maddox Jr. from Toledo. And you and I were actually talking about him recently. I know you're very excited about what he can bring to Xavier next year.
I'm really excited about Dante, and I am about John and Marcus too. I mean, I really I think that we got a really great group here. But Dante Maddox, a couple of things about him. When we did our research on Dante, you know, I have some great friends that are in the MAC conference that competed against him for the last 2 years. And there wasn't a single coach, head coach, assistant coach, so many different programs inside the MAC that didn't rave about Dante's ability as a player and his winning intangibles as a player, work ethic, demeanor, making key plays, clutch plays. Again, and I talked about Marcus Foster, you know, coming from Furman. I can't tell you how much respect I have for Toledo. They are an incredibly winning program, right? In the Mid-American Conference, the MAC is a tough league. I mean, I used to be an assistant coach there many, many years ago, and I think of the coaches that were in the league at the time, the players that were in the league. I mean, that's usually the team you don't want to play in the NCAA tournament, the MAC champion. And so I have a lot of respect for the league. But Todd Kowalczyk, who's the head coach at Toledo, is an excellent coach, an excellent offensive coach. He's been doing it for more than a decade at Toledo. They've won back-to-back MAC regular season championships, and Dante's been in the mix and a starter and all-conference player on both of those teams. This past year, at one point, they won 17 games in a row. That's very hard to do. And when you're one of the best players on the team, or the best player on the team, if you're an all-conference type of player, a veteran player on a team that wins 17 games in a row, you have some winning qualities. So I think the first thing that jumps out for me is his character, his work ethic, and how consistent the feedback was in the Mid-American Conference from the peers, from his opponents, how much they respected Dante as a player. But Dante's ability to shoot, play pick and roll, pass the ball, be a two-way player, and just be a guard who really understands how to play. Again, I know I'm going to sound like a broken record, but I said we wanted three things this spring. The first thing on our list is we had to get older. We had to get more experienced. And to some degree with that comes toughness. And I think that Dante embodies that quality right there. He has been through seasons, practices, big games, clutch games, wins, tough losses, knows what the long grind of a season feels like and looks like. And to bring somebody in with that maturity, skill set, and game, I think the sky is the limit for him.
Yeah, and then the very next day, you get Ryan Conwell from Indiana State, lefty. I'll let you tell the good people about him, but I know a lot of people feel like probably should have been playing in the NCAA tournament this year. They were one of those bubble teams that kind of got passed over, but to their credit and to Conwell's credit, they go all the way to the NIT final.
Yeah, so Ryan Conwell is, I think, one of the best players that played in college basketball last year when it comes to the impact he had towards winning. Again, I just talked about Dante. I've talked about Marcus and John. Getting people and players from winning cultures and programs that practices everything, and they've been in these tough road games, and they understand the pressure and the reward of winning. They also understand the pain of losing. Where they are in their respective careers, they have great self-awareness at this point. They know who they are. And I think when I look at Ryan and watched Indiana State, first of all, they are one of my favorite teams I watched this year. To win 30 games in a season, a lot like when I referred to Dante winning 17 games in a row, that's the outlier. I mean, there are coaches and players that will be put in the highest regard in our game that have never had a 30-win season. It's incredibly difficult to do. I think Indiana State was as well coached as any team that I watched, but Ryan's ability, he made even more three-point shots than Quincy did. That should put it in perspective. But yet he has the playmaking ability, the ability to defend, to get fouled, to make big decisions, to make winning plays. And on that team, in my mind, he was the straw who stirred the drink a lot of times, not just with the ball in his hands, but making plays without the ball and making key passes. He did a little bit of everything, delivering from the free throw line like Quincy did for us and getting fouled. He's a terrific player. We're super excited about getting him. When the timing of what you talked about happened for us, and if this were a draft, the two players that we really wanted were Ryan and Dante. And it's not oftentimes that when you think like that it happens for you. But I just thought they were the perfect fit for how we play in terms of stylistically. They came at a time of great need for us. And I think when you look at the perimeter players of Marcus Foster, Ryan Conwell, and Dante Maddox, you have three players right there that have been in winning cultures, that are versatile, that can play together and can really come in day one in our conference, and I think have a fearless approach to being able to come in and be really good for us next year.
Yeah, I know a lot of fans are excited about the way you guys are going to be able to play with a lot of the
The other thing about Ryan is he's left-handed.
Yeah.
So when you think about Davion McKnight, two lefties I think is difficult. We ran into that with Marquette right? When
Kolek
you
and Cam Jones.
Cam Jones and Tyler Kolek, these two lefties that are just flinging passes and driving to their strong hand and shooting, left-handed. And it's just when you have two of them out there at once, sometimes I tell you, it's I don't want to say fun to watch, but it's unique.
Yeah.
And so, that's, I think, the other ingredient that will be fun to watch when you follow us next year.
Yeah. The fifth guy that you go after, sort of a compliment to John Hugley and Lassina Traore. Big man from Long Beach State, originally from the Ivory Coast. What stood out about him? Why did he seem to land on your board and become a priority that you guys wanted to grab him?
Well, first of all, we really desperately needed another front court player. I think when you look at our roster, you have Zach coming off of his injuries, healthy right now, and you have John, which we've talked about, and then you have Jerome Hunter working in the background, and Jerome could play, whether it be on the perimeter or inside, as we know, but coming and getting better. I really think weekly towards returning from his Achilles, but you could see like we really needed a quality player at that position. So to get Lassina, he almost rounded out all of our efforts. Lassina, unbelievable motor. No one's ever going to question how fast he runs, how high he jumps, how hard he plays, how much he competes. He's a great competitor. He's one of America's leading rebounders. When you look at the fact that this year at Long Beach State, again, a team that made the NCAA tournament, he had a lot to do with that. Lassina averaged 10 rebounds a game on the season. In my career, I've had two players for the year average double figures in rebounding, and that is Ryan Anderson, who's on our staff, and DeAndre Ayton.
Yeah.
So that should tell you how difficult it is to average 10 or more rebounds. And rebounding translates. Again, one of the things we wanted to improve from a year ago is our rebounding efforts. We needed to be better in that area. I think Lassina can really go get the ball. The other thing about him is he's a double-figure scorer, so he can score in and around the basket on drives. And I think with our style, there's not a combination that Lassina can't be on the court with. John and him can be in together. Obviously, Zach and him could be in. And I just think that when you go through that next level of age, experience, physicality, Lassina is every bit 6'9". So with both John and Lassina, you get two veteran, older, big guys to join Zach and Jerome. And I'd say from an experience perspective, you can see what we're talking about. We had to get older. We had to get more experienced. To some degree, we had to become more physical and tougher. And I believe that we've been able to accomplish that with this group of five. I will also tell you that it's important that we finish up and add, down the rest of our roster. But this group of five here was crucial for us based on where we were when the season ended, what we were trying to accomplish. And I think a lot of the players that we set out to get, positions we really needed, a way of recreating, resetting our roster moving forward, we've been able to do. And I think I credit our staff. You can't imagine the work ethic. I shouldn't say the work ethic, but the hard work and the time spent that our staff has spent right on the heels of from the last game ending to right now. There's been no break.
And this is certainly not a knock against who you had last year, but to put things into perspective, okay? I know you said you're not done. You currently have 10 scholarship players. Last year, you had 7 guys on your roster who had never played college basketball in America. This year, you have 0. So you flip the script and you say, we have 10 guys that have done this, that have been through it. Compared to last year, we had 7 guys who had never done it, who had never been through it. So I think from that standpoint of wanting to get older, wanting to get more experience, you accomplished that goal. At what point do you start to think about how you see these guys playing? I know you have a system, you have a philosophy, you have things that, do what we do. This is what we do. But are you already at that point where you're thinking about how you want these guys to play together and what it might look like?
I think for the most part, that's going to take care of itself because we, in fact, do believe in how we play. There's always things that you want to grow, evolve in as a coach. there are things that this group could be better at or not good at, and you learn that over time. But I think the more important thing is just from a culture perspective, when you have a lot of change from one year to the next, and that is the new way, so to speak, and you're going to experience that, you still have to get everybody on the same page. You have to get them to play for the win, for each other. You have to have the word Xavier mean everything. It has to be respected. And how do you go about that when you're welcoming in a lot of different players? By the way, don't overlook the 5 guys that we have that are returning. You know, they're not as important, in some cases more important, only because they know how to do it and what we've done, and they have Xavier experience. So, you know, again, as a reminder, you have Trey Green and Dalen Swain, 2 guys who are on the all Big East freshman team that are going to have great springs, great summers, and great preseasons that now aren't going to be going through everything for that first time, which you talked about a minute ago. And I have no doubt both of those guys are going to make a significant jump from who they were as freshmen. You have Davion McKnight, who's in his final year, who started every game for us, played a ton of minutes, averaged 14 points a game, and I believe will be one of the best guards in the Big East Conference next year, and should be one of our leaders, if not our de facto leader, right, on day one, because he's the oldest and the most experienced when it comes to minutes played. So, and then you have 2 guys that sometimes you forget about, and that's Zach Fremantle and Jerome Hunter, who both had season-ending injuries a year ago. Both guys are on their way towards health. Zach is healthy, and I am very optimistic that Jerome will be as well. So it's 5 incoming players with 5 returning players, and now it's up to us to fill in the rest of the spots. I don't know if we'll bring in 3 more guys. Might just be 2, could be 1. I'm not sure, but I do think that we have to fill our roster with at least 1 more guy, if not 2.
Well, I think that gives a lot of people a really good idea of what the transfer portal looked like, what it felt like, and how you went about your business with sort of rebuilding your roster. So I really appreciate you taking the time. I know we gave you some time away from the podcast to focus on that. I know that that's important. I'm glad that it worked out the way that it did. And I know I speak for a lot of people when I say I can't wait to see what the Musketeers look like next year. So
no, I believe we're going to finish this off in a really good way over the next month. And I have no doubt that it's going to be an exciting summer. And we have the makings of a team that really can bounce back. Depth, talent, experience, and bounce back from where we were a year ago. And look, the one thing that we need better fortune with is injuries. You know, even a year ago, part of our circumstances is, you know, you can only overcome so much. And I think that losing Zach and Jerome when we did last summer, you know, it really threw a wrench into a lot of things, made us scramble and do some things last summer in terms of adding to our roster, because at that point we could barely function. And, you know, I don't know if we ever could quite overcome the loss of those 2 guys, plus some other injuries that we suffered during the year. So hopefully we got all those injuries out of the way, and we can move in and have a healthy start. You know, I watched UConn and thought of their season, and like Creighton and even Marquette to an extent. They all had certain blips on the screen when it came to injuries, like Kolek at the end of the year.
Yep. Klingon early in Big East.
Klingon, who missed a couple weeks there at the beginning of the Big East year. But for the most part, I think their coaches would agree, like, they really experienced a great stretch of health from the beginning of the year to the end. And that's part of this as well.
Yep.
But, you know, Adam, the one thing that I wanted to say, too, along these lines, when I got back to Xavier in the spring, I think it's March 23rd, 2022, a little over 2 years ago, college basketball flipped upside down 2 more times. It's not even the same anything as it was then. No one really understood what the COVID year would be. There was no such thing as like the transfer portal as it is today, with May 1 being the end date. There was no 2-time transfers without graduating. I mean, and you go through the different things that have changed. How we once did things, it's not anywhere close to where it once was. And so as I say that, I also want to say this. Our new philosophy isn't just to recruit through the transfer portal, or you had to be in college already for us to want you in our program. That's not the case. I think each year represents a brand new slate and beginning. But when we will be at our best is when we have that blend that I talked about. Guys like Trey Green coming in as high school seniors, contributing as freshmen, growing, learning, getting bigger and stronger, smarter on the court, and then being a better sophomore. Dalen Swain the same. Combined with transfers that sometimes have only a year, but sometimes transfers that would have multiple years. For example, Ryan Conwell and John Hugley both have multiple years. They don't just have 1 year. Davion McKnight is returning back for his second year, right? He had 2 years. So I think I don't want to misspeak or send the wrong message that this is our new way. Are we evolving and growing and making some changes in our philosophy that I think give our program the best chance to be successful? No doubt about it. And no matter who we get, when we build our roster each year, you know, the culture of all in, everybody totally committed to our way. And, you know, communication, respect, unity, passion, joy, you know, all of those words have to have meaning throughout the course of our journey together. Like, we have to be able to really come together and play for the win. So that becomes the quest of me and our staff. And it also becomes the challenge of every coach in college basketball in this new era to be able to get a group to really care and play for each other. And that process will start soon.
Well said, Coach. Well, we appreciate your time, and we appreciate everyone who has watched, listened, and subscribed. Episode 27, Coach. We've done 27 of these.
Can I say this too?
Yeah.
I want to give a healthy congratulatory shout out to Romain Sato.
Yeah.
He was inducted into the 2024 FIBA Hall of Fame. I don't think people in our country, and maybe even college basketball fans or NBA fans, truly understand what an honor that is, what a distinguished achievement that is for a player to be in the FIBA Hall of Fame. I mean, Adam, that's the world that we're talking about, the best in the world. And Romain is a legend in Europe, not just because of who he was as a player, his own performance, but because of the impact his performance had on winning championships and winning. And like when you say the name Romain Sato in Spain, in Europe, if you're a EuroLeague fan, a FIBA basketball fan, you perk up and say, do you know him? Like he's a legend. And so Romain, congratulations on behalf of everybody here at Xavier. Me being one of your coaches here at Xavier, continue to be so proud to say that I was your coach. So look forward to seeing you here maybe this summer.
I'm going to call it now. Future Sean Miller podcast guest, Romain Sato.
It's percolated. we just haven't been able to punch it out, but it's imminent.
It's coming.
Yeah, is that the right word?
It's imminent.
All right,
You got it. We want to thank our sponsors, as always, Deer Park Roofing, Payroll Partners, and TGE Solar. And we've got some cool episodes coming up, so I think people will get a kick out of that. Signing off from another episode of the Sean Miller Podcast.
This has been the Sean Miller Podcast, presented by Deer Park Roofing, with your hosts, Paul Fritchner and Adam Baum. Join us again soon for another episode with the head coach of the Xavier Musketeers, Sean Miller.
The Sean Miller Podcast is proud to partner with Payroll Partners, where you're not just a number. That means providing a best-in-class HR and payroll experience that was built on award-winning technology and live support customer service with a dedicated payroll specialist who's just a phone call away. You shouldn't have to choose between technology and customer service. At Payroll Partners, you get both. Payroll Partners is locally owned and operated by a proud Xavier alum. Visit payrollpartners.net. That's payrollpartners.net. The Sean Miller Podcast is proud to partner with Deer Park Roofing, a company that's provided elite service for homes and businesses since 1996 and leads the industry in professionalism, quality, and responsiveness. Whether your needs are residential or commercial, like the outstanding work on the Cintas Center, the home of Xavier basketball, Deer Park can handle any job and ensure it's done right. Deer Park's motto is protect what's important, and what's important to you is important to Deer Park Roofing. Visit deerparkroofing.com.